All right. Hey, everybody. Today, I am with Ashley and Helen. They are local organizers here in Reno, and they are focusing on the issue of the abolition of ICE. So I want to welcome you guys both on here. It looks like we might have lost Ashley's video there, but welcome you guys both. Oh, there she is. She's back. Well, welcome, guys. I'm glad to have you both on.
Yeah, thank you so much for having us.
Thank you for having us. We're super excited.
Not a problem. So kind of like we were talking about before, I want to have a conversation that maybe we start with kind of the bigger picture, and then maybe we go into maybe some of the more specific policies and specifically talking about ICE and things like that. And to kind of start off, I wanted to ask you guys kind of your perspective on immigration generally, right? So I come from a more conservative perspective. And, my thought is we have borders for our countries, and that we utilize those borders to control kind of who, to keep control over who comes in and out. What would you say, and I guess we'll start with you, Helen, what would you say your perspective is on, do we even need borders? Like, what is the purpose of having borders, or should we have them?
Well, I'm a strong believer on we shouldn't have borders, just because we should give the right to people to come and go as we please. I do believe in having some sort of check-in system instead of borders. So instead of having a border, maybe we can have certain offices at certain locations where people go and check in and say, hey, I'm from whatever country and this is why I'm here. Also give a reason on why they are coming in. Of course, we want to know what exactly is everyone's intentions coming in, of course, but the whole border thing to separate countries and people from coming in, the whole idea of it being utilized as a weapon to show, hey, this is our country, you're not coming in. I don't agree with that personally. So I feel like we shouldn't have borders, but I am a pro having some sort of check-in system that I'm not really sure of what we should be doing, but I mean, that's kind of a general thought and idea.
Cool. Ashley, is that pretty much your perspective as well?
Yeah, I can completely agree, because at the same time, even though we don't have borders, we still need a system because, of course, unfortunately, there's criminals everywhere. You can't really escape it. There's a lot of people that do want to come into the United States and destroy us because of certain things that are going on politically. So I completely agree with Helen.
So some sort of a check-in system. So basically what you're saying is that we should have, again, I just want to make sure I understand, that we should have, basically anyone can come into our country, but that people should be required to check in when they come, right?
Right.
That way people don't feel like they have to sneak in, because they know if you just show up at the front door, like, you're going to be let in.
Right, but it's not meant to seem as easy as it sounds, because of course we know that, like I said, there are criminals. There are people that do want to do stuff in the United States for certain political reasons. So it's not like, oh yeah, let's just get rid of the borders and that'll be the final thing. Like, no, we would really like to have a system, but also not have people feel like they're not welcome here.
I see. So in letting people into the country, but if you do want to keep out criminals and you put in some sort of a check-in system, how would we prevent people who were criminals from sneaking around the border?
I'm not sure who you were asking, but
go ahead, Helen.
Well, either way, we always have people coming in secretly, based on what we have going on now. That's more of what's going on anyways. There's people sneaking in more than there is people going through the borders, simply for that reason of they feel like they're not welcome. They can't come in. They traveled throughout miles and miles from wherever they came from just to not get let in, So I feel like there's a lot of sneaking around anyways. So a way to prevent that, would be the check-in system. Like there's a reason for it, and that would be to make sure there's background checks on people, like kind of questioning and saying, hey, kind of go down a list maybe and say, why are you here? Where are you from? Is there any criminal background we should know about you? If not, these are the penalties that you can face for not telling us this about the criminal background checks that you have already in your country. It's not as simple as just letting people in and checking them in. Hey, this is my name, I'm coming in, you know. So I believe either way we have people sneaking in. We might as well let the people that are sneaking in with good intention in than to allow so many coyotes and people crossing people illegally for illegal activity to have an open business, you know,
Yeah.
because people that are doing illegal stuff to try coming into the country trying to do illegal stuff, they're coming in the same way an innocent person is, you
Yeah.
know. So
It
if an
sounds,
innocent person says, hey, you know, they're not doing everything they did before and now they're letting me in, I have nothing to hide, I'm seeking better life, I'm not a criminal, I can show that I've been a good citizen in my country, you know, there's no reason why they shouldn't let me in, then that's kind of it kind of is going to average out to where people are only sneaking in secretly if there is
if they're
criminal
criminal.
activity.
Yeah, so that kind of makes sense in my mind. This idea of letting the good people keep out those who have criminal records, essentially, is kind of what we're looking at there. Is that kind of a fair
Right.
assumption, the way you're saying
That's
it?
exactly, yeah.
So, I mean, it does sound like even in your system, there would need to be some sort of a body that would enforce this, you know, quote unquote border, because otherwise, you know, the criminals are still going to try and sneak in. I mean, I don't think we're going to say that just goes away.
Right.
So there would need to be some sort of a body that would do that, that patrols the border because, you know, like you said, the only people who have a reason to cross the border illegally would be people who have something to hide, right?
Right.
Does that make sense? So, and I'm just kind of looking at your guys' system. I want to understand your vision for the way a border would be. The border would basically be, if you're clean and you don't have any issues, you can come into the country. If you're a criminal, then we are going to stop you.
Right.
Right.
And also like it's not all crimes, you know, like if they have just speeding tickets that
Yeah.
they ended up having a amount of money
Serious,
or something like that. It has to
serious,
be very, very serious criminal records that
like
also
a
say,
rapist or
you
something.
can't get a chance in the United States because you did this and this, you know, whereas a person that just went to jail for, they got into a fight at a bar one night getting drunk, you know, and ended up hurting the other person. I feel like they were just drunk, you know, that they don't deserve not to have an opportunity for one bad mistake. But if, of course, if that one bad mistake is very a serious crime, then of course, you know, that's the elimination of those people.
If we were to adopt your policy and we basically allow, I mean, most people in the world, the vast majority of people in Mexico and in all over the world, in China and in anywhere, in Hong Kong, these are good people. Your average person in the world is not a criminal who's out committing rape and things like that.
Right.
And are you worried about, well, I guess I wouldn't say worried. Let's just put it this way. How many people do you think would show up at the border if we opened up our gates in that way?
Well, honestly, I mean, think about it. What's going on right now in the United States isn't that different than what we're asking for. Obviously, if you commit a crime here, you go to jail. So, I mean, technically, it would kind of be the same thing, but obviously, there would be a certain point that you'd have to reach to be like, okay, you can't be forgiven for this. Child rapists, people who kill, people who traffic.
Yeah,
violence.
and I get that. What I'm saying is, will we have what do you do if there's a flood of literally 500 million people, like double the amount that are in our country currently, who show up at our gates because they want to live here? Like, do we just come on in, guys? Do you guys see any problem with that?
Honestly, I mean, technically that was kind of already happening before COVID, before all these restrictions at the border, before we said, oh, you know, Americans can't fly out of the United States, oh, certain people can't come in. It was kind of already happening. You know, I don't think there's really a specific way to stop it, but there is a way to handle it because, of course, that would be so much people in one spot that the economy would be affected. A whole bunch of other things would be affected. But again, that's another thing that we would have to, I guess, kind of figure out because you don't really know what will happen until it actually happens.
Okay.
You know, you can't really say, oh, you know, we'll probably do this right now, but then it'll be a different story in a couple months once this whole COVID thing is over.
Uh-huh. Helen, go ahead.
Well, my point from there would be, instead of funding so much for these cages that, we built, and so much funding towards ICE agents,
Costs.
training and weapons and everything that they're funding, we can build more asylum. We can build more.
So you think we have the budget to be able to, I mean, I guess, so these people would come in very, very large numbers into our country. I mean, millions and millions of people around the world want to come here. I mean,
Right.
I would say a small number would be, say, 50 million people would want to be here. And they come with relatively little to nothing. And I guess some of the questions that I would have would be, what are all these people going to do when they get here? Most of these people that would come probably wouldn't have a lot of higher end skills. They probably would, at least at first, until they were to, it takes time for people to get educated and things like that. What would they do when they got here for work and all the rest? I mean, we only have so many jobs in this country. If you bring in 50 million people, that's, I'd say, let's say 100 million. That's literally increasing the population of our country by 1/3 with a whole new group of people. And I don't care where they come from. You can come from Europe, you can come from Asia, Africa. It's not a racial thing in any way in my mind. In my mind, though, I'm really have some serious questions about the economics of mass migration into a country.
Right.
Oh, go ahead.
I don't know. Okay. So, like I said before, it's just funding. Like, funding is going to things that were not necessary. Like, there's funding going to, there's cuts being in the educational board right now. Like, let's take that for an instance. Trump is cutting the educational budget just for no reason, just because he wants to open up schools. Right. So now he has extra income, whereas he's done this to many specific spots. Like, it's not just the educational board. He's cut funding from, like, majority of things that were for the people, and I can't think of any on the top of my head other than education, because that's going on today. Like, that the whole press conference was today. But that's like an example. Like, if there's so much budget cuts in certain things that are important, where is he putting all this money to? And
how much money, I mean, do you think, like, let's say ICE, like its entire budget, right? So if we took all the money from ICE, how much money do you think that is, just ballpark? And I'm not 100% sure myself, so I'm not trying to like quiz you, but let's just, I might look it up here, like ICE's budget. What do you kind of imagine that it is? Let's see if I can kind of figure out what that is. Because I
did learn that just the police funding here in I think our Washoe County, it was 35 million for the cops, for the police.
Okay.
So I'm not sure how much ICE would be here.
So ICE in the entire nation, I just looked it up. ICE has an $8 billion budget. Okay. So let's take $8 billion. Okay. And let's say that we bring in 100 million immigrants, right?
Yeah.
So 100 million immigrants. And let's see how much money that is for those immigrants that are coming. Because at 8 billion, I think you're looking at there. I think you're looking at about $80 per immigrant.
$80 per immigrant. And that was just the ICE.
Yeah,
budget.
That was the ICE budget. So one thing that I do wonder about, and maybe, you want to look into, is sort of the economics of this. And let me just kind of give you my perspective on this for a second. One of the reasons that I have a lot of concerns, because it isn't just about, I mean, I don't get, you guys are working and I'm working, and that's where we get our income from. It's not like the government just gives us money. In fact, the government takes the money that we earn. Now, the government can put up together certain social programs like public schools and things like that, but our income has to come from the work that we do, right? Now, one worry that I have is that and this is one of the reasons I think some people are concerned about this, is because if let's say that I work at Walmart, and at Walmart, I'm making, let's say $12 an hour, okay,
Mhm.
at Walmart. Well, the reason Walmart pays me $12 an hour is because they know that they can find someone to do the work for $12, right?
Right.
And if they could find someone to do it for $10, they'd probably pay him $10, right? And now let's say there were less people. If there were less people for them to choose from, well, then they'd have to offer more because there's demand for people to work for Walmart, but there's only so many people out there who are willing to work for it. And the way I actually own a business, and if I want to hire people, I have to offer them a high enough wage that they're willing to commit and work for me. Now, this is where there's a challenge. If you have a flood of mid to low skill labor, for me as an employer, and here's the thing, a lot of business owners love illegal immigration because their thought is, if you have a ton of workers here, then they're all competing for my work. So I don't have to offer as much. I can pay less and less and less, right? But if we restrict the number, it actually gets very hard for me as a business owner because when unemployment is really low, I have to offer people a lot of money in order to get them to work. And so one concern that a lot of people have, working class people, is that they're going to have a lot more competition for the work that they're doing if there's a ton more workers in the country. So what are your guys' feelings? And I'll start with you, Ashley, since I think Helen went last, and then Helen, I'll give you some time. So Ashley, go ahead.
But well, going back to that competition thing, that's already happening nowadays. People think that if you go to college and if you get this degree, you automatically have the job, when that's not the case. One thing that I do say is immigrants do make up America. Why? Because they're willing to work harder than most of these privileged people out here that think
they are.
Oh, if I go to college, I'll get a degree, I'll be a doctor. Cool. But then they don't want to actually put in the work. So that's kind of like.
But do you think it's fair to the immigrants that are here if they have more immigrants competing for the jobs that are out there? Because
I think competition for jobs isn't going to change. But one thing that I did want to discuss, going back to that whole funding thing, we have so much police that are overfunded but uneducated. Like, let's go, for example, what happened to George Floyd. How is it possible that those cops can get out on a $750,000 bond? Where did they get that money from? How is it possible that they got bailed out within a couple of days? There's that funding that goes to cops only so they can go out and basically murder these people. Why can't we put that into a system where, okay, if these immigrants come, we can educate them, we can teach their kids, we can show them how to speak English, we can help them out, we can get them a place to live, we can help them find something here. Why do we always have to overgive to people that don't really necessarily deserve it, or they don't need it, like cops, like ICE detention facilities? How much money do they spend there holding kids in cages? How much money do they have, and yet they still give kids
do you know how much money it is, like an actual dollar figure?
No, I don't. I'd have to Google that. I can't.
Because that's one thing that I would just encourage you guys to research, and then look and then divide that by the number of immigrants. Because like I said, I don't think 100 million is an out there figure for the number of people who would want to come to America.
Right.
There's 7 billion people in the world, and we're talking about, if only 10% of the world decides, hey, US opened up its gates, and they show up, you're still going to be, I think you'd be dealing with 700 million people at 10%. So I'm saying like 1% of the world's population coming here if we opened up the gates. And my question is in most of the world, like for instance, in China, the reason people get paid so little in China is because they have a ton of people there to do the work. Right. It's low skilled labor. Now, there's not that many people who know how to do brain surgery. And so if Walmart wants to hire somebody, you know what I mean? And they have a lot of options, then they can kind of make those people compete against each other. But if you need a brain surgeon, there's like 50 of them in the country that are really good, and they get to say, I want this much money, and you got brain cancer, you're gonna be like, yeah, I'll pay whatever you want. You know what I mean? So my thing is just, I worry about, because the way you determine wages are determined by the supply of labor against the demand for that labor. right? There's a high demand for brain surgeons because there's almost no brain surgeons. So anyone who needs a brain surgeon, it's like you're going to pay whatever's there. However, there's a lot of people out there who can do, basic administrative tasks. And so therefore the pay for those tasks is very low because there's a lot of people that can do it. And so what I worry about the working poor of this country. I worry that if we allow, again, it doesn't have anything to do with race. In fact, the working poor of this country usually are immigrants themselves.
Right.
And I worry about what happens to them when we flood the markets with these people. Now, on the other hand, I would love to get a flood of immigration of people who are surgeons and all that kind of stuff, because then it would actually make surgery less for all of us, because there's a lot more surgeons out there and they're all competing with each other. And so it makes it easy. They have to drop their prices to get the business. So that's just sort of the economic side of it when it comes to immigration, to where, at least from my perspective, I worry about its effect on the poor population that's already in the country. There's only so many jobs. Now, with that said, immigrants can also create jobs.
Right.
They do. And we should
That was
try
going to be my point.
Oh, what was that?
That was going to be my point.
Yeah, go ahead, Ellen, because it's a valid point. So go ahead and go with it.
Right. So like you were saying, these immigrants can actually make businesses, and majority of personally, my grandpa came here as an immigrant, and he owned 3 auto shops in Mexico. So he brought that business to Los Angeles. He worked for an auto shop, gained money, and then he put up his own. And now we own 2 businesses in Reno and 1 in Los Angeles. So
that's awesome.
we also have 2 businesses up here giving jobs to people, and that's what I mean. Like, there's so many people that can come and have so much to offer. Like, they can make this economy better. They can make more businesses for more people out there. And if
Elon Musk is an immigrant,
right.
Think about how many jobs he created. No, I have no doubt that that's the case. Now, here's my question, and where I when I'm looking at this, I go, because I don't think race, and just so you guys know, I think I'm a pretty typical conservative, right? Mm-hmm. Me and my friends, it isn't really about race. I'm thinking, what if we have the ability to get as many immigrants as we can who have that are more likely to start a business and create a business, right? Like, your grandpa's a perfect example. If he were to show up, so let's say we get 3 people who show up at the check-in station, right? On the border. We have one who's a criminal. He's gone, right? We already agreed on that. Now we have 2 people there. One of them is someone who has almost no skills, who basically, if he enters the country, the probability is that he's going to be just another worker. Now, then you have your grandpa who comes up, and your grandpa has the ability to create jobs. And we can see that there's a very high probability that him coming to our country would create jobs for people. Well, I would say, first of all, your grandpa, totally let him in every single time. Let those people into our country. They're going to make the economy better. And then once those people are in our country, we can actually get more workers to come in. You see what I'm saying? So it's like, my thing is this though, but we have to get the ratios right. In my mind, what you have to do is you have to go to the working poor of our country, and we have to kind of say, how are you guys doing? If they're struggling to make ends meet and we bring in a bunch more people to compete for their jobs, I then am worried like that might hurt them. So my thought is, let's not bring in more people that are going to compete for their jobs. Let's bring in more people like your grandpa, right? Let's go bring in more people that are more likely to create jobs. And then once they're here and they create those jobs, we can then import more people. And a way we could measure that, in my mind, is the unemployment rate. If the unemployment rate is beginning to go down, that's a signal that says, hey, let's let in more workers. We can sustain more workers, right? If our unemployment rate is getting higher, that means we need more job creators, right?
Right.
So anyway, those are kind of my thoughts on how to kind of control the policy. So it's not so much that I have this way different approach per se. It's just that for me, that check-in system doesn't just look at, are you a criminal or not? It also looks at the country itself, at its economics, and says, how do we, so for me, a border is just a way of controlling who we should let in based on the interest of the working class of our country and what's going to improve things for our country. And we try and let in as many as we can sustain in a sustainable manner. Does that make sense?
Right.
It does, but there's just one thing that I wanted to touch base on. Like, yeah, we can have people come in that do have businesses in other places, but it's a completely different system. Someone having a business in Mexico versus having a business here, everything's completely different. And one thing too is that, there may be people that maybe come and they don't have skills, but at the same time, years later, those people are the same ones getting good jobs, getting their own houses, getting an education, learning how to speak the language. It's not like you're going to come here and everything's going to be given to you. No, sometimes you got to work your way up and help other people to get that same opportunity. But my thing is, if now with the whole COVID thing, if we can give people stimulus checks, if we can overfund the police, if we can give ICE detention centers all this money to keep people in cages, why can't we actually use that money to help people that do come here, that struggle in the beginning, help them get an education, help them learn English, help them maybe take classes so they can start their own businesses and help other people coming in as well.
Yeah, I don't necessarily have a problem with funding programs that can help immigrants to go from someone who is, just another worker to someone who's actually creating jobs and businesses and things like that. Don't have any problem with that whatsoever. My only point, I guess, that I'm going at is how do we kind of measure which group, in my mind, it's just, I think we have to have a more sophisticated system than just anyone can come in. I think we should look, yes, at criminality. Obviously, we all agree on that. But I think we should also look at, does it make sense to bring in 10,000 workers into the city of Reno if the workers in Reno are already struggling, when we could go out and bring in people who are likely to create more jobs first, and then we bring in, additional immigrants at that point. So to me, and regardless of that exact scenario, all I'm saying is it sounds to me like there needs to be a system to control this, that it shouldn't just be unrestricted. Hey, if you want to come, you come in, because I just worry that if we don't have control over it, that we may end up hurting people. What do you think, Helen?
I mean, I agree. The whole having a system and some sort of enforcement on it, I just don't believe it's ICE. Like, I want the whole picture ICE currently has. It's how I want to say it. It's Trump's vision. He wants all these people caged up, living in filth, and not going months and months on with not having the proper necessities, getting raped, abused. There's kids being missed. Like, this isn't a proper ICE. Like, I would want to abolish the ICE that we currently have and create it to maybe a smaller ICE that instead of funding all these cages, they fund things like Ashley mentioned, maybe a program that starts people at the bottom, like teaching them English, building more asylum, building facilities that say, hey, this is where you can go so you can learn this trade or learn this specific field or whatever. Like, I feel like that we're funding and doing things the wrong way. So that's my way of abolish ICE. Like, it's abolishing what we have currently and making it smaller, way smaller than what it is now, and way, different from what it is now. That's my vision. I want ICE to change. I want ICE to be smaller. I want ICE to help immigrants instead of put them in abuse and put them in cages and treat them like they're not supposed to be here. Treat them like they're aliens. And like, I even don't like using the term alien, just because it's kind of a segregating word. It makes it feel like, oh, who are they? Like, they're not human, they're not from here. They're not, from our community. They're aliens. Like, no, they're not. They're human. They just don't speak the same language or look like you. Doesn't mean their capacity is any less. So I feel like it's just what ICE is doing is wrong. They need to work with immigrants instead of against them.
So with that said, I'm assuming then that you believe that anyone who's here that came here, and I mean we have to be straight about it. There are laws here that say if you come here, like, we're going to send you back to your country, right? It's like we have immigration laws. So the people who came here, they did break the law. And I think that okay, so what do we do about that is a question that can be kind of challenging. And I'm assuming, and I don't know, I guess I'll just open that one up. And I'll start with you on this one, Helen, then we'll, Ashley, if you have anything to add. What do you think we should do with everyone that's here illegally? Like, what would you recommend?
I would recommend if they're already here, they already have a job, they already live somewhere, they have a roof over their head, like they're stabilized here, there's no reason why they shouldn't be a citizen. They've obviously showed that they're capable of living in the US, they're capable of paying their rent, they're capable of making their mortgage, their car insurance, or whatever it is. They're stable enough to be a citizen. So we should start the process of making them citizens, making them people that can work here in the country and make it better. They're already here. They're already doing it. We might as well act and treat them as such. With that being said, I feel like we shouldn't have to pay thousands and thousands of dollars to become a citizen, because that's what holds people back. People are very good citizens, have clean records, do their life. They're an average American, and they're not citizens, and what's stopping them? It's having to pay the thousands of dollars to become one. And I feel like maybe if we cut down that to make it like, I don't know, maybe you pay $250 to start your citizenship, and that's all you pay. Maybe a $20 fee here and there for notarizations or whatever, but it shouldn't be so much money for people that are already here, already stabilized, already showing that they're good citizens, to prove that they are. Like, they shouldn't have to go through such a process. My mom, when she became a citizen, she had to pay out of pocket to go to Mexico. Like, they had to do so much spending, and that's what keeps people from becoming citizens.
Yeah. And believe me, a conservative position that you might find is that we actually are all for making things less expensive from the government, because we hate paying the government all that money. So, so we might have a point of agreement on that. Ashley, do you have any thoughts on that? On what we should do with people that are here?
Yeah, for me, I totally agree with Helen. I think that if you're already here, there should be, obviously, if you have no criminal background, there should be no reason why you should get sent back, especially because a lot of people are seeking asylum. They're trying to leave the violence that they have in their neighborhood. I think it's kind of a waste of money to send them back. The plane rides, the paperwork, the keeping them in cages. That's money that you can use literally towards something else to help them grow here. There's a lot of people here in Reno, Nevada that don't have papers, and they already have their house, compared to someone that does have papers and they have their house. So there's like so much things that they do already that they shouldn't be punished for. That's what they came here to do. They worked hard. They got their jobs. They don't do anything bad. They pay their taxes. So there should be no reason why they should be kicked out.
So what's funny is, you might, at least from my perspective, I think all of us kind of know this. I have a friend of mine who's a DACA recipient, and greatest guy in the world. I mean, he's a solid dude. Like, I've now with that said, so this is where it gets a little bit tricky for conservatives, because I think most conservatives would actually agree with you that these people, a lot of them that are here, are great members of the community. They're working, especially if you're working, no criminal record, like, you're a contributor at that point. You know what I mean? You're paying taxes, all that kind of stuff. I'm all for it. In fact, by making them citizens, you're going to be able to improve the ability to get taxes, so they'll be able to contribute more to the system. So I would say that most conservatives don't have a problem with that. This is a challenge, though, that we do have. And I'm going to flip it around so you guys can hopefully kind of see the perspective here. Let's say that 90% of these people, if they were able to vote, were going to vote for Donald Trump. Would that change anything in your mind about it? Because for us, we know that the conservative movement knows that immigrants tend to vote Democratic.
Right.
And so there's a thing of like, well, and there's a lot of them. Okay. So I mean, we're not talking small numbers here. We're talking about potentially as many as 20 million people, right? If you give the Democrat Party an additional 20 million voters, say goodbye to us ever winning an election ever again. Now you can see why that creates kind of a thing. So from a perspective of someone like myself, and maybe I'll reverse it though. You have people who broke the law to come here, and now they're getting to vote for Donald Trump in huge numbers, and you guys will never win an election again. So here's where I've thought maybe there's a compromise. Is that, and I've thought about this. I said, look, here's what I would say that we do. Okay. A person who wants to come here, they broke the law. Okay. There needs to be some kind of consequence in my mind to having broken the law. Okay. And that consequence is that you don't get given citizenship. You get given residency, permanent residency. You can live here. You can work here. You can do all that kind of stuff. However, you're not a citizen, but your children will be. And then we just basically say, look, anybody who's here illegally, go to the police station. They'll do a background check, make sure that there's no criminal stuff. And right there, they'll just say, here you go. You now have residency. Here are your papers. You no longer need to worry about ICE coming for you. And then we'll know anybody who didn't go to the police station and do that, they probably have something to hide.
Right.
And so then what we do is we say, look, in the US, because we did this, from now on, like to work, you got to have papers. And anybody who's hiring somebody without papers is in big trouble. And the idea then is anyone who's here who has a criminal background, they can't find work. So they're all going to leave. And so we would immediately get all the criminal people. If there are criminal people here that are here illegally, they're all gone. All the good people stay. They all get that. And we don't upset the political balance here. Because I do think that there are, and I think that there's a compromise that could be made there, right? And I think that if we want to get something done, in my mind, I think there has to be some sort of a compromise made. Otherwise, we're just going to continue in stalemate and things aren't going to get better. You know what I'm saying? What are your guys' thoughts? I'll start with you on this one, Helen.
Okay. So going back to like the voting, to be honest, I'm a voter for the Libertarian Party, so I'm a very strong believer that people get to decide for themselves. So if it means, these people are all going to vote for Trump, then I mean, that's their decision. They get to vote for who they want and whatever they believe it's going to make this country better. So in that sense, I have nothing to say other than I would agree with giving everyone citizenship and let everyone be free to vote for who they want, who they believe.
And Ashley, before I get to you, Ashley, I want to address one thing there, Helen. And I think that's not a terrible sentiment. Like, it's not immoral to think that, right? It's like, they're here. Like, why not let them be on the decision making? My worry is that from a political perspective, that won't ever fly. Like, it's sort of like if we don't give something, then nothing will change. But if we can make that compromise, and I just don't know, I mean, you're literally telling all the Republicans, like, make everyone legal and then you guys will be gone forever, like, politically speaking. And I just think that while you may feel that that is fair, to me, it's like, we got to find some kind of a way to make something happen. And is it worth it to say, look, everyone now doesn't have to worry anymore about these things. We can abolish ICE. I mean, heck, if you were to do this kind of a program, maybe I'd be very, very open to that sort of a thing. and we could kind of solve this problem. But if they have that requirement, basically to say the Republican Party, you have to go bye-bye, you're never going to get the Republicans to support it. And not only that, you're going to get the Republicans fighting it tooth and nail. And so my thought is it's sort of like, it's going to become an all-out war to make that happen, or we can find some kind of common ground. So anyway, I'll get to you, Ashley. I just want to see, Helen, do you have any other thoughts on that before I go to Ashley?
Yeah, so I guess an idea would be to have more campaigning. I mean, if they feel like their party's gonna go abolish, if we do decide to do this, then we should do, like you said, do a compromise where we can have campaigning to where people can decide for themselves. Like, I get it if it's going to go into political war, because like you said, they don't want to be abolished. They don't want their party to go bye-bye. They want to still keep their power. But I mean, for a reason is that they're losing their power, like, if there's more views coming in and it's not a Republican view, then it's for a reason, that's their personal opinion. And if it happens, it happens, is what I'm saying. And if like right now, if it happens, it happens. If ICE ends up winning us and then there's nothing that we can do, then we're just gonna, at one point, they're just gonna silence us, right? Well, we would want that compromise, like you say. So I believe it's just upon liberty. It's just everyone for liberty. I believe that there's not any compromise that we can do. Like, we're just gonna have to fight and see who is the blue side. Yeah, because there's no compromise that we could do. Like, it's up to the voters, and if it means people are coming in voting Democrat, then that's because the campaigning went well. They believe in the beliefs that they do, and that's who they're gonna vote for. I mean, I've always been with the Libertarian Party. We're always small. We get on the ballot, but when have we ever won? When have we ever even made it to the discussions and the debates? Like, And
I lean libertarian, just so you know.
Oh, awesome! That's great. No, awesome.
I'm not a libertarian, but I lean that direction. I have a lot in common with a lot of libertarian friends of mine. So, Ashley, what are your thoughts?
My thoughts basically is that that's kind of already happening now in our community. We do have Latin Trump supporters. They just, regardless of their views. Of course, some people think that because they have their citizenship, because they have their papers, they are above it, and they do go for Trump. And some people even say, like, oh yeah, you should get rid of them, even though that's your same people. So, I mean, in a way, we kind of are going with it, but at the same time, everybody has the freedom of speech. Just because if they choose to go one way, it doesn't mean that me or Helen can make them change their opinion. Everybody has their freedom of speech. We have our opinions, they have their opinions. But yeah, a compromise would be the ultimate thing that we would have to do.
So one thing that I wonder about with that, with a sort of a compromise of some kind, is if the Latino and Black vote was more diverse, I think you would see a much different political dynamic play out. Because here's the thing. We have ideals and things like that. Politicians generally, they know they got to get votes. And so they generally will gravitate towards the things that are going to get them the votes that they need. Right. And so right now, it's starting to change in the Republican Party to some extent. But the Republican Party hasn't really felt the need to reach out to a lot of the minority communities, because they basically are like, it's a lost cause. They're not going to vote for us. Like, they're just not. And so one of the issues that happens with that, and I don't like that, is that what happens is then it makes the Latino community and the Black community turn against the Republican Party, and they end up having policy differences that, again, there's less diversity within the parties. And I think if there was more diversity within the parties, if there was more ideological difference within different communities, you could get where I think it would help depolarize some of our politics to some extent. And one of the questions that I have for you guys, because this is something, and I'll tell you right now, I have relatives who are in politics that are actually elected officials, and they have and they're talking with all the Republican officials too. They're Republicans. And we've had a lot of conversations about this, but Republicans all know that the growing demographic in this country is the Latino community.
Right.
Like, we know that. And I think the Latino community knows that too. In fact, one of the funny things is that the Black community, and people have said this, is that they actually are worried because they're going to be eclipsed by the Latino community in as far as political power goes. And they're not going to be as important as the Latino community. And so the Latino community is very much the group that both parties are going to want to try and gather the votes for. Now, one of my questions is, what do you guys see as the primary thing that keeps Latino voters from conservatives? That because from our perspective, there's sort of this thing where we go, well, wait a minute, especially a lot of Latinos who are Catholic, believe in family, right? Family first. That's kind of like a big, like, conservative thing.
Yes.
God. I'm pretty sure that the Latino community are very big on their faith. Even the Black community, same thing. If they're Catholic, Catholics have pretty strong feelings about things like abortion. Kind of pull yourself up by your bootstraps, start a business. Those all to me seem like things that are very, very, like, when I see my Latino friends, like, those kind of seem like their values. So why is there a disconnect between maybe the Republican Party and conservatives and the Latino community? What do you think causes the rift?
I honestly feel like the Latino Party usually goes for equality, so they see what the benefits are. They see they don't want to hear the sugarcoating. They want to see what will they get out of this president, what will help them, what's gonna be a bonus for them instead. So I feel like when Republicans and conservatives are campaigning, they try to campaign with, like, family and like everything you basically mentioned, family, business owners, what else, like children, or through church or whatever. They campaign through these things that are morals, but they don't really express, hey, this is how we're going to help you, like, this is what's going to be a change in your life.
So that's a good point. And I'm gonna emphasize on that, because having lived in Argentina, I saw this, right, with the Peronists and things like that down there, is that there is very much in Latin America, when it comes to government, the idea is, what can the government do for me, right? What are the programs they're going to put in place for me? And that is that's a very different outlook. Americans tend to be more libertarian.
Right.
Sort of like, get the government out of our lives, leave us
Right.
alone. We don't want to have those kind of programs. Like, we want to have our freedom, right? Because at the end of the day, if the government's going to take money from one group and give it to another, like, that's the government violating taking someone's money from them, right? So do you think there is, because that's what I worry about. I worry that socialism is very, very common in South America and in Central America, right? Like,
Right.
there's a lot of moves in that direction. It does seem like there's a higher level of acceptance of that. Do you think that as a libertarian, especially you, Helen, this is why I'm kind of looking at that. I would imagine you're not a socialist, because libertarians and socialism don't quite mesh very well. Do you see that as a problem? Do you think there's a way that we can help? Like, frankly, I'm super stoked that you're a libertarian, because I'm like, you need to go make more libertarian Latinos. Like,
that's been my duty since the whole campaigning started. Like,
well, then your perspective on that, and I'll get to you, Ashley. I'm not cutting you out of this one. I just want to ask her about this. Is how do you help Latinos change from more of that socialist outlook to more of the libertarian outlook?
One thing is they like the idea of having their own property, having their own say with where their money goes, which is one fundamental thing about the Libertarian Party. We get to decide what we do in our property, or who's on our property, what we do with our money, who's around our money, or whatever the case is. So I feel like bringing that idea of, you're gonna get your property, you will be getting your own decisions, you will be able to make this much money and spend it on this, whatever you want to do, that's what they get, like, oh, that's freedom, like that's what I came here for. That's how, like in Mexico, that's how it is run. We instead build our own house, we just get the land and then we do what we want on our land,
So, and in Mexico, see, that's one thing I wonder too. Like in Mexico, they're leaving a particular political system. They're entering the United States. They obviously have some reason that they came here. Obviously, there's good economic opportunity, but do they recognize, like, what are the things that they don't like about the Mexican government?
Well, I do know that there's a lot of corruption, and that's usually the main reason why they're, fleeing, because there's so much corruption that they're, the money that is for their community doesn't even go to where it's supposed to. It just, too much corruption in their government to even know exactly how they even help. But the one thing that Mexico does have is, the libertarian stance, where they get to decide for themselves. With that being said, the government
isn't overly intrusive in the little things, like on your property. You can kind of do what you want. You don't gotta. Right. Like, I'm trying to do a project right now and I'm dealing with the county, and it's just a friggin' ridiculous how much they do. And in Mexico, I know it'd be like, do we want, I have to get 50 million building permits. I don't know. That's my assumption. I'm not 100% sure.
So it basically makes the best of both worlds, because they get that liberty that they have, like, well, just Mexicans, they get that liberty that they had before, with the safety and better government regulations here in the U.S. Because regardless, the U.S. and government outbeats Mexico in a long shot, because Mexico's whole government is corrupted. There's probably not even one politician out there that has a good sense in their, good bone in their body.
I go to Mexico every couple of years, probably for a surf trip or for something, and it's always like the police are the ones you got to watch out for.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So, Ashley, do you have any thoughts on this?
I do. Just like Helen was saying, the government is incredibly corrupt. Like, the economy here is completely different. When I was in Mexico, my aunt was explaining to me that literally they only make, like, I forgot the exact amount, but technically for them, $100 is a huge amount for the week. Yeah. Like, that'll last them a whole week, maybe even 2 weeks. And one thing that's really bad about Mexico is, you can do whatever you want to a certain extent. If you don't pay the police, if you don't pay the people on the corner that run the street, they're going to steal from you. They're going to beat you. They're going to take over your business. So technically, you're free to a certain degree, but you still have to pay to those people for protection, because if not, they're going to come and take it anyways.
So it's that. So an appeal to the Latino community would be sort of this law and order, which is something that they care about. So no corruption, and then liberty.
Right.
The idea of doing what you want with your property. The government's not going to be on your back. You're going to get to work, keep your money, all that kind of stuff.
And there's no one down the street that wants to steal from you. And if you don't,
well, that's interesting. Considering everything that's going on right now, right? People want to, like, and maybe we'll kind of shift over into that other topic of kind of the broader things that are going on with a lot of the racial issues, with sort of the defund the police movement and things like that. My worry about that is, like, in my neighborhood, we don't really have crime problems, right? So who's going to get hurt? It's going to be the people in the communities who don't have police there. The police, they're bad cops who do bad things. They need to be punished. Like, we all can agree there. But my thing is that if you reduce law enforcement, just look at any statistics. And when law enforcement goes down in inner cities, crime goes up. That's why there's a ton of shootings right now going on in all these cities. And there are people that are going to get hurt by this. And it's going to be people in these communities. And so I wonder, like part of my thing is, I wonder how the Latino community is going to react to higher levels of violence happening as police get pulled back.
Well, that's a huge difference, because we're not saying like, oh, defund the whole police. We're never going to have police again. Everybody could do what they want. We're talking about the ones that take advantage of their power, the ones that are corrupt, the ones that intimidate people because they know that what they can do it. They can do it. They can get away with it. It's in the media. You have money. You can get away with basically everything. So what we want to do is have people educate the police more. Get rid of the awful cops that are doing all these killings. Get rid of the awful corrupt cops that would rather have a benefit to them than actually protecting their own people. We're not saying take away all the police, because obviously that's virtually impossible. Who's going to protect us? It'd be like the purge.
So it's kind of crazy, because I mean, there are certain groups within this movement that really are radical and want to completely get rid of police, or, you know, abolish them in such a way. What we're really talking about more is reform the police, improve the processes that get rid of that. One of the things I worry about is that defunding reduces the resources that allow for increased police training. You know what I mean? Like, if you want to hire more people to train police and have more programs for that, taking away the funding isn't going to lead to more of that. It's going to lead to less of that.
But then again, I feel like, okay, if their funding is already overfunded, where did Helen go?
Uh-oh. Might have lost her. It's okay. I'll if you want to shoot her an email real quick or something, you can, or shoot her a text and just tell her to click that link again, and she should be able to get back on. Oh, looks like she's back already.
It like muted on me, and then I was like, what the heck? And then I couldn't hear you guys.
If you ever go away, you just got to go find the link again, and you can get right back. So Ashley, you were saying.
Sorry, Ashley.
Hold on, I can't hear her. Helen, speak.
Oh, now it's you.
There we go.
Okay.
Sorry, what was the question again? I lost my train of thought.
The question was just about defunding the police, if that will reduce the resources for better police training and better accountability offices, things like that, to make sure that, you know, we do get rid of bad cops.
Well, I was going to say, I think that there should be a limit to how much we defund them, because like I said, it's awful that a police officer who literally just killed someone can get out on bail while paying $750,000. Like, that's a lot of money.
So with that said, so bail generally is posted by a bail bond company that loans the money to get them out of jail. And then if they don't show up for their court date, they send a bail bondsman to go grab them and drag them to the court date. So it isn't that he had that much money. It's that there literally are businesses out there like Dog the Bounty Hunter who will loan people a certain amount of money so that they can get out of jail. And then once they get to their court date, they get the money back. Does that make sense?
Yeah. But either ways, they're still overfunded, and they have so much benefits and stuff that they have that a lot of people don't have. So what we're saying is, we can technically cut back on their funds. They don't need all that money for tasers and guns and all this other stuff. What we need to do is, with that money that we do cut off from them, we can put it into training people to be better cops and getting rid of the ones that don't deserve to be there, the ones that are taking advantage of their positions. So
are you worried that if you pay cops less, that you'll have less people want to be cops? Or, you know, if you offer a lot of money to be a cop, you're going to get a higher level of person who really is like, hey, that's a good paying job. Like, I'm going to go after that. And you're going to get whereas if you offer less pay, it's like, well, I can't get any other job. I guess I'll be a cop. You know what I mean?
Right.
Do you worry that, and that's my concern. My concern is that, you know, you drop the funding. Like if I offered $100 an hour to do a job, I'd have everyone in town applying. And then I could pick the very best person. Where if I offer $5 an hour to do a job, I might get someone who like needs some extra cash that'll show up to do the work, but I'm not going to get the same quality. So usually you get what you pay for. And if I'm paying cops very crap, I may just get crappier cops. That's my concern.
Yeah, and I totally agree with that. I honestly don't know how much cops make right now, so I don't know what the difference in decreasing their amount would be. But at the same time, they still get a whole bunch of benefits that other people don't get.
They
And I
definitely get
understand.
pretty nice benefit packages. I will say that.
Do they? I don't. Can you like tell me what they
Like
are?
they get a pretty good retirement, I think, like a pension. Most
Right.
cops get a decent pension. The one thing that happens, so if you want to talk about something where I think we might be able to find some agreement, is there are police unions. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Police unions are something that need to be looked at very hard. Okay. Because police unions can protect bad cops.
Right.
Similar thing will happen with teachers. You have a really, really crappy teacher, they can't get rid of her or him because the teachers union has certain deals that say you can't fire them, or there's all these legal things that they have to go through. So I do think that I'm not against police reform. I think that there are things that need to be looked at that can be made better. And I think
Definitely.
good cops want to get rid of the bad cops because they give good cops a bad name. And so, again, I think there's more compromise there than a lot of people might realize. I do just think we need to probably have more dialogue about it. Helen, I wanted to, you were kind of saying that you wanted to talk a little bit about sort of the broader kind of, literally we're getting to a point where there's almost a race war practically breaking out where people there's that much tension. I know you had mentioned that you kind of had some thoughts on that. Is there anything in particular that you wanted to kind of address when it comes to that and kind of the broader context of immigration, race, all the stuff that's going on with the police? What are your thoughts?
Definitely. So like you said, it's kind of a race war going on now. I don't know how much you might know about the Vanessa Guillen crime and how there was a Black man that was a suspect that committed suicide before in questioning. That broke out a race war between the Mexicans and the Blacks, because now the Blacks are like, well, we're over here defending Black Lives Matter like it's our movement, but we have a Black man that just killed one of our female Mexican soldiers. So with that being said, I am seeing so much conflict between the Mexican and the Blacks currently, and I feel like what we need to realize is that that's what the government wants from us. That's what they want. That's the exact reaction that they look for minorities, where they're fighting each other. They're distracted. They're not thinking about what we're doing. They're fighting each other over a crime. And how I say it is, we shouldn't let one bad apple determine the whole entire race of Blacks. Yes, he was a man of color that created a very brutal crime, but in the end, he isn't just another person that needs his own his own punishment for it. We shouldn't punish the whole race for it.
So from that kind of libertarian perspective, one thing is libertarians and conservatives also tend to be very individualistic, right? It's about you as an individual and your race. While I appreciate the culture of Mexico and of Argentina and African American culture, there's a ton to that. However, we shouldn't necessarily define ourselves ultimately by the group that we're a part of, because we're all part of multiple groups. I'm a big believer in kind of the Martin Luther King thing. Why, judge people by the content of their character, not by the color of their skin. Why is it that this to me is like, why is it that we're looking at other Black people and saying we're angry at them because this one bad Black guy did something awful? Why don't we say it wasn't a Black guy who did something awful, it was a bad person, right?
Yes.
It's like, it's let's stop, because what you're saying when you do that is you're kind of saying like, oh, well, a white cop killed a Black suspect. It's like, I had nothing to do with that. Right. Just because my skin color matches the skin color of the cop, like, I had nothing, like, why am I somehow responsible or accountable for things that I had nothing to do with simply because I happen to share? It's the same thing for you guys, right? If there's some Mexican gang that does something, should I start thinking differently about you two? No,
absolutely not.
That's the problem nowadays, is that social media has a huge influence. You get one person saying like, oh, I hate Black people because they're over here we're standing up for them and they're killing one of our own. And it's like, no, you shouldn't think like that. You shouldn't be influenced that easily. Like, everybody has a right to their own opinion, but at the same time, there's so much people that are influenced because it's like, oh, you know, this person said it, they're probably right. Or this celebrity said it, oh, you know what, I have to agree. No, you have your own mind. You can think for yourself. And like you said, it shouldn't be a race thing. It's a person thing.
Yes.
Every person is accountable for their own actions, not their race. Of course, there's always criminals in each race, but that's never going to change.
Well, and like Helen was saying, it's political, right? Because the idea is, if I can get an entire group upset at the people I want them to be upset about, and then I go, vote for me, I'll go and get, I'll help you guys all out. You can get an entire group of people to vote for you. And so politicians do that intentionally.
Right.
They intentionally play these games. And like you said, they're trying to divide us into groups so that they can get the group that they want to vote for them. And that is poisonous. And it ends up getting people killed and rioting and doing terrible things to one another. You know what I mean? Because at the end of the day, people begin to think in these group terms. And, especially with you, Helen, with kind of your libertarian view, that's like the opposite of libertarianism. That's Marxism, right?
Right.
Marxism is all about groups and kind of pitting certain groups against other groups, right? It's sort of the haves versus the have-nots, the oppressed versus the oppressor, the, white people against the black people. That is very much the dynamic of that can be used for political gain. And it can, and it works politically. That's why they do it. But it's up to us as citizens to say, no, Helen is a fellow American. She's a fellow human being. She's not a Mexican. You know what I mean? Now, you may be a Mexican, but that's not, I don't judge you based on a group identity, right? We all are individual people. Now, what do you think about this whole thing with Black Lives Matter? The founders of Black Lives Matter, literally, they are Marxists. Like, that's kind of their thing. They've said that. Like, full on, that's where communism comes from. It's from Marxism. So what are your guys' feelings right now about that movement? Has it gone too far? I'll start with you, Helen.
Okay. So I believe the rioting might have gone too far, but the protests, no. Everything that has been peacefully done, I believe that has made that mark that they want to create. They want that nationwide acknowledgement. They want to know that there's people out there that are viewing their protests, that are following their protests, that are they're getting their point across, is what I mean. So I feel like, no, I don't think it's gotten too far. I do believe rioting I think the rioting has gone too far because we had riots here in our own town. We had riots downtown where it was a peaceful protest and everything was successful until the end, where people started to go crazy and riot, So I believe if it starts to riot, it's gone too far. If it's peaceful protesting, it's not. It can never go too known. It can't go to, we can't have not just one person not know about it. Like the point is for every single soul to know Black Lives Matter, So I get where they're coming from. But I wasn't aware of their stance, I guess.
Yeah. And I would encourage you guys, because I think there's a difference between the idea of Black Lives Matter, which I don't think anyone really disagrees with.
Right.
People are on board with the idea that, Black lives do matter. Like, no problem there. And it's a very clever slogan. However, the organization itself, and I encourage you guys to take a look at their website. Here's their What We Believe page. It says, we disrupt the Western prescribed nuclear family structure. I was shocked by that. I was like, wait, what? Like, you guys want to destroy the nuclear family? And they say that they want to change it into extended family villages that collectively care for each other. So this is, just so you guys know, that's kind of what the communists kind of were all about. Now, I wonder from a Latino perspective, Latinos, like, family is family. You know what I mean? Like, that's one of the things I admire most about the Latino community. I think we can all learn from their dedication to family.
Right.
But this, that they want to do that. I don't know. Were you guys aware of that? What are your guys' thoughts on, I'll start with you, Ashley. What are your thoughts on Black Lives Matter, the organization, if you go to their website, saying they want to disrupt the nuclear family structure?
I honestly didn't know about that. I really did not know. And I'm actually glad that you told me, but at the same time, it's like, yes, that is Black Lives Matter, but that's not how everybody believes it to be, or that's not what maybe everybody wants it to be. Like, I can say something and say, like, okay, well, Mexicans have to be at church and whatever, but at the same time, you could have Helen that says, well, I don't agree with that. I don't, like, I agree with some of your stuff, but I'm not going to follow it. So I think that's kind of the same thing. Like, yes, the Black Lives Matter organization, maybe that's what some people believe, but then you have other people that are like, no, I can't really, like, yeah, you
And
have your opinion, but
I would say that's probably what I've observed. I've observed that a lot of people, there's a difference between the actual organization Black Lives Matter
yes,
and the movement generally to try and be aware of issues facing the Black community, which again is a whole another long conversation that we could have, which we don't have time for right now, as we're kind of getting low on time. But I'm trying to think if there's any other things I wanted to mention here. I guess just any final thoughts here. We're kind of going to wrap it up here in the next few minutes. So I'll give each of you guys a chance to give kind of any final thoughts that you have about this conversation, and just anything else you want to say before we take off. So Helen, you go ahead and go first.
All right, perfect. So I guess the last things I would want to give out to the people watching this is stay united. Do not fall into racial wars. Get educated. Definitely know what's going on and who are people running for whatever it is. We as the people elect the people into office. They work for us, so we get to demand who is there and demand what the community wants. So just my advice is just educate yourself and definitely be a part of the movement that isn't spreading hate. No race wars, no nothing. Just make sure that your morals are correct, so then you guys can educate others and maybe get them on board. Just like that's how my libertarian move has been. Everyone decides for themselves, and if you can change the perspective of someone and say, hey, this is my perspective, do you agree? They might, and that's one more person down, that's joining the cause.
Well, and I'm a big fan of you spreading that intellectual diversity, because I'm a big believer in that. And I have things that I agree with people on or not, but you better understand the people that you disagree with first before you make sure that you know that you disagree with them. Ashley, you go ahead. What are your thoughts?
So first of all, going back to your last question, I wanted to really answer that because it's something that I think is super important. Basically, the way that Black Lives Matter went about things, I have mixed feelings about it because I understand, like, okay, this has been going on for so long, and yet, like, you're trying to get justice and you're trying to do this, but there's only so much you can take before you literally break, because unfortunately, no one's going to notice you unless you cause commotion. So in a way, I kind of agree with what they've been doing, because in a little amount of time, they're changing so much because of the fact that they're done with being playing the nice way. They had to do something to get people's attention, and that's unfortunately the only way that's going to work. So going back to that, I do have mixed emotions. I can't say if I agree or I don't agree, because I technically I see both sides. But one final thing that I did want to say is that yes, it is important to have these conversations instead of just automatically saying, oh, you don't agree with me, okay, that sucks, like, oh, I'm not going to support you, I'm not going to do the Black Lives Matter, I'm not going to do this. Obviously, dividing everybody racially is not going to get us anywhere. We have to be together in solidarity, because it's our fight against the government, it's our fight against Trump, it's our fight against racist people, and there's so much things that we can change just by having a simple conversation.
Definitely. And I think that's one of the reasons I wanted to reach out to you guys today, was to have that conversation. I think we probably have a lot of ideological differences. We don't have to have any shame about that. I may razz you guys a little bit online, and if you do, don't just remember I like
you do.
Kind of, like, hey, I exist.
Hey, I'll poke a little fun. Just know it's all kind of more in kind of I'm kind of laughing on the other end of it more than anything. Just be aware of that. But with that said, I really do encourage myself, like I'm having this conversation with you guys. I encourage you guys. Understanding is different than agreement. Okay.
Right.
You want to make sure that, and don't just go listen to the caricature of the other side's argument. Okay. If you have someone or an entire movement, like let's say that you think conservatives are just evil, wicked people. My thought is this: go and read the top minds in the conservative movement. Go read them. Go watch the videos by the people at the top of their kind of list of the smart conservatives that are out there. Read people like Thomas Sowell. Read people, when it comes to racial issues. There's a lot of really good people out there. I won't go into all of them now. But the same thing on the other side of the equation. I need to make sure that I'm going out and I'm looking at the best arguments from my opponents, not the worst. Because why would I attack something that I don't fully understand? And if you haven't really read and listened to the top voices on the intellectual side, Trump may be president, but he is not at the top of our intellectual group. And any conservative out there, we will all say that. Whether or not we vote for him, no one is saying he's some great, political philosopher or a great representative of the thoughts in our movement, right? And so I just want to encourage that, because when you expose yourself to new ideas, what you're going to find is either, wow, I've listened to the best they had to offer and they're wrong. And then you can be very confident in your position. But if you haven't listened to the best, then you may still be wrong. You haven't fully listened, right? And I wouldn't be surprised if someone like you, Helen, you probably went out and looked into some of this libertarian stuff, and it, there are certain people you read or learned from that kind of are the reason that you have the views that you do today. But if you hadn't done that, who knows? And I'm the same way. My big thing is this: let's go out, let's learn about each other. Let's have conversations. Let's make arguments. Let's be civil. And I think what ends up happening from that is you end up making friends along the way, and you end up, like I said, you may not agree with people, but at least you have an understanding of where each other are coming from. And that's always good. So, guys, thank you very much for coming on today.
Can I say one last?
Oh, yeah, go ahead.
Okay. Just very quick, for those that are watching it before I believe the 9th and the 10th, we will be having our fourth protest at Park County Jail at 5 p.m. Saturday, July 11th. Is it the 11th? Yeah.
It is.
July 11th. And we will be having a sectioned off place around there that was actually given to the information was given to us by a sheriff in the county park. So we should be ready to go. There's no fear in going in out that day. So, because I know there was a lot of fear that, it's at a jail. Well, we have a sectioned off.
And to participate in our digital protest, because it's super important.
Right.
Okay. And definitely be safe out there, guys. And like I said, even if we disagree, we can respect one another's right to go out and make our voices heard. So we can agree on that. All right, guys.
Good.
You guys have a nice day. Take care.
You too. Thank you for having us.
All righty. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.